InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of InvestorIdeas.com Podcasts. Today's podcast is sponsored by Phyto Extractions Incorporated, trading on the CSE as XTRX, an agricultural scale cannabis extraction, distillation, and product manufacturer located in Langley, BC at its co-located Health Canada licensed standard processing for extraction, not cultivation, and sales of extracts, topicals, and edibles through Ad Astra Labs Incorporated and Analytical Testing Laboratory through Chemia Analytics Incorporated. In today's podcast, going to be looking at a few public company announcements from Fire and Flower Holdings Corporation, trading on the TSX as FAF and the OTCQX as FFLWF. AION Therapeutic Incorporated, trading on the CSE as AION. Isracan Biosciences Incorporated, trading on the CSE as IPOT and the OTC as ISCNF. And Canopy Growth Corporation, trading on the TSX as WEED and the NASDAQ as CGC. So first starting with Fire and Flower Holdings Corporation, who announced the milestone achievement of 250,000 Sparks Perks trademark reward across the Fire and Flower retail network. Now, the Sparks Perks members receive special benefits where permitted, including Spark Fastlane, click and collect checkout, personalized recommendations, curbside pickup, free rapid delivery, and exclusive deals. And no cannabis purchase is required to join the free program, and the Sparks program is now available across all Fire and Flower banners, including Friendly Stranger, Happy Days, and Hotbox, and delivers personalized product recommendations to members. A core metric in our business is lifetime customer value and the cost of customer acquisition. We believe that Spark Perks customers have the highest lifetime customer value in the industry through their larger basket sizes, more frequent visits, and the diversity of products they consume, said Trevor Fencott, the Chief Executive Officer of Fire and Flower. Now, while growing rapidly, we have also focused on a low cost of customer acquisition. Although metrics such as the same-store sales are important, as an evolved, technologically enabled retail company, we focus on customer engagement metrics that will be critical as our platform scales to the U.S., continued Trevor Fencott. Now, the members who order from the same-day rapid delivery spend 110% more than non-members and have 90% larger baskets than non-members, and members served through Fastlane Pickup spend 49% more than non-members in store. Now, the Sparks program leverages the Highfire Advanced Digital Retail and Analytics platform, and Highfire is the leading Canadian data and analytics platform within the cannabis industry and recently entered into a strategic agreement with BDS Analytics to incorporate Highfire's Canadian digital retail and analytics into BDSA's existing online US-based market research platform. And as part of the agreement, BDSA will offer Highfire IQ Canadian cannabis data to its US-based clients, and Highfire will be able to provide US data from the BDSA to its Canadian clients, allowing both companies to offer enhanced cross-border data to their respective consumer bases. And Fire and Flower also announced that it will release its financial and operational results for the fourth quarter and fiscal year of 2020 ended January 30th of 2021 before financial markets open on April 27th, and the results will be available on SEDAR and the company's website, fireandflower.com, at Investor Relations. And following the release, Fire and Flower will host a conference call with Trevor Fencott and Nadia Vadavaz, the Executive Vice President and Operations and Chief Financial Officer, at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on April 27th. So, pretty good goal for Fire and Flower Holdings Corporation, hitting that 250,000 mark for their Sparks Perks members. Again, when we're looking at the technology side of retail, Fire and Flower is miles ahead of many of their competitors, whether you're looking at US-based or Canadian-based retail. Again, from the technology perspective, many companies are still not focusing as aggressively on some of these sort of membership reward programs similar to Highfire and the Sparks Reward Program. And I did talk a little while ago about that sort of cross promotion or cross work between Highfire and BDSA Analytics, and that now Highfire has access to the US data and BDSA has access to the Canadian data. And this sort of leaks into Fire and Flower's previous announcement that they are going to be looking at entering into the US markets. They've already started working on that, and eventually that is their plan, as well as to expand their retail footprint into the US as well as they have in the Canadian market. And again, when you're comparing them to the overall retail marketplace in North America, Again, they focused much more heavily on technology and much more on these reward membership programs than most of their competitors. So I do think they'll do quite well once they enter into the US market. And also they're going to have all that analytics and data coming from BDSA Analytics to really address some of the issues that may be facing retail before they enter into that market. So they definitely seem to be doing well when you're looking at overall North American retail. And again, unless something changes quite rapidly within the retail sector overall, I would expect them to continue doing well once they enter into the U.S. Moving on to AION Therapeutic Incorporated, who announced that its proprietary and patented combination of mushroom preparations, the AION F7 and the AION F8, collectively the AION mushroom preparations, showed high efficacy in killing the HER2 plus breast cancer cells and ER and PR breast cancer cells and triple negative breast cancer cells by direct cytotoxicity. Now, as shown in recently completed third-party independent and carefully controlled 3D spheroid cell culture studies performed by Bionesis Laboratories, these cytotoxicity studies demonstrate directly killing of the breast cancer cells by the AION mushroom preparations, which suggests such preparations may be effective in treating HER2 plus breast cancer, ER and PR plus breast cancer, and the very difficult to treat triple negative breast cancer, with each of these types of breast cancers tested independently. Now, in a separate independent studies at Bionesis Laboratories using the antibody-dependent cellular cytotoxicity, or the ADCC assay, and the antibody-dependent cellular phagocytosis assay, the AION mushroom preparations also demonstrate enhanced cell killing of HER2 plus breast cancer cells via stimulation of the immune system. And the preparation showed similar effectiveness as trastuzumab, a monoclonal antibody treatment sold under the brand name Herceptin, manufactured by Roche, and is a U.S. FDA-approved medication useful for the treating of HER2 plus breast cancer cells that is either early stage or advanced stage metastatic. So based on these results, Dr. Herbert A. Fritsch, the Chief Science Officer of AION Therapeutic and former professor and Director of the Clinical Chemistry at the University of Texas, MD Anderson Cancer Cell Center, stated that this extremely exciting results obtained from these independent 3D cell culture studies suggest that when appropriate AION mushroom preparations are used together, they may offer a dual approach to killing the HER2 plus breast cancer cells through two separate and distinct pathways: direct cytotoxicity and antibody-dependent cytotoxicity. And this significant improvement in cancer cell cytotoxicity that was observed within the preparations were combined with trastuzumab warrants immediate further investigation in breast cancer patients. Dr. Fritsch continued, "We look forward to the next step of initiating clinical trials of the AION mushroom preparations, and without Herceptin and the other trastuzumab biosimilars for the treatment of HER2 plus breast cancer patients, as well as the AION mushroom preparations alone in ER plus and PR plus breast cancer cells in triple negative breast cancer patients. Each year, more than 1.6 million new cases of breast cancer are diagnosed globally, making it the most common cancer among women, and more than 500,000 women will die of the disease," said Graham Simmons, the Executive Vice Chair and CEO of AION Therapeutic. He added, "We're excited that these AION mushroom preparations that have shown very encouraging initial test results will be developed to be transformative in how women are treated globally." So, another cool piece of technology coming out of the functional mushroom category. Again, I've talked about that a couple times of how that is growing quite aggressively. At least in North America, it's picking up a little bit more steam. When you're comparing it to the Chinese mushroom preparation market, though, it is still miles behind. Again, when you're looking at some of the more advanced formulations, they're still all coming out of China at the moment. We are starting to see a lot more North American companies start to look at this industry with a little bit more enthusiasm and start to come up with more unique formulations and a little bit more lab testing. I do think that there's going to be some amazing medical benefits that come out of more and more investigation into the functional mushroom market, as we're seeing potentially here with AION Therapeutic and the treatment of breast cancer cells. There's also been some really cool research coming out with Cordyceps militaris, specifically towards asthma treatment as well as lung disease. There's actually a few trials going on right now specifically dealing with COVID-19, symptoms. So I do think that more and more anyone who's paying attention to what's going on in the mushroom market overall, it's going to be extremely fascinating to see what sort of medical technologies come out over the next couple of years. And I do think that this area of focus is going to be quite beneficial to the entire field of medicine, and hopefully you do start to see that there's now alternative treatments that are much more reasonable as far as the impact on the body and impact on your overall health, and give people sort of a simpler chance at fighting some of these diseases, whether it's breast cancer or asthma or PTSD, etc. There's a lot of different ailments that different types of mushrooms can treat, and hopefully, again, that becomes the first option of treatment versus much more invasive cancer treatment that is often the norm. Moving on to Izrakan Biosciences, who announced that it's been granted a foreign owner's cannabis license by the Israeli Minister of Health. And this important event paves the way to conclude a number of outstanding key partnerships and regulatory considerations in preparation for commercial operations. Now, in a press release issued on March 24th of last year, Izrakan announced that it's entering into a joint venture agreement as part of the phased partnership of a 2-year near-term farm operations located in Ain Horesh, Israel. And the agreement included an equitable sharing agreement of both operating costs and revenue through participatory agreements comprising of construction services, growing services, land lease agreements, IMCA licenses, and a number of sub-agreements establishing and defining the various rights of all the parties. And today's announcement represents the removal of regulatory ownership barriers in order to fully execute the terms of the joint venture plan. Now, the highly sought-after foreign owner's license significantly legitimizes the company's presence in Israel. There are only a small number of foreign-owned sector participants who have obtained similar licensing, and Izrakan is now favorably positioned to leverage certain advantages. And in related news, the company has concluded all requisite construction infrastructural installations in preparation for the commencement of planting and subsequent production at its Heifer Valley-based Ain Horesh farm. And largely due to COVID-19 related delays, Izrakan has a final regulatory hurdle to conclude, which appears to be moving closer to conclusion. And regarding the recently announced medical cannabis import partnership letter of intent, Izrakan is working diligently with the Israeli partner to conclude the agreement for the importation of Canadian products on an expedited basis. And additionally, Izrakan is finalizing an agreement with its Canadian partners to secure high-grade genetic material for introduction into its Israeli-based genomics program. Now, Izrakan's CEO Daryl Jones stated, "We continue to push ahead on multiple fronts, from product importation to new genetics programs. On the one hand, today we also celebrate our official approval as foreign owners in this exciting sector. Now we can truly dig in to finalize matters and accelerate our efforts to fully enter the commercial marketplace. And we've been in communication with all the relevant parties, and now with the licensing in place, a number of initiatives will be triggered almost immediately and should result in an accelerated pace towards revenue generation. We have to admit that always thought the pandemic would have created delay, and it could have been worse. In the meantime, we have by no means been standing still and have used the opportunity to invest in added value and develop our relationships throughout the region. Once again, we thank our Israeli team of consultants and stakeholders who have proven to be invaluable at representing our interests so effectively and who share our vision for success." So with their foreign owner's license or cannabis license, that is going to probably put the gas on a lot of Izrakan's partnerships that they're in the process of finalizing right now. Again, if you've been paying attention to sort of the announcements coming out from them over the last year, they do have a lot of things in motion. Was slowed down quite significantly from COVID-19, but that being said, they could be closer to production and exportation in the next couple of months, if not by the end of the year. And I've talked a lot about the benefits of the Israeli market, especially when you're looking at import and exportation into Europe. And I do think that they'll set themselves up quite well for how the European market is expanding at the moment. So hopefully by the time that they're ready to go and launch their products, there will also be more markets available in Europe as we're starting to see more legalization pushes, a little bit more leniency on licenses and import and export policies in a lot of those new European markets that are starting to open up. Lastly today, looking at Cannabis Growth Corporation, who announced Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits, the world's preeminent distributor of beverage alcohol, as the distribution partner for its U.S. portfolio of CBD-infused beverages. Now, this partnership announcement follows the recent launch of Quattro, Cannabis' first line of CBD-infused beverages sold in the U.S. market. Through this groundbreaking partnership, we will leverage Southern Glazer's established distribution network to bring our CBD beverage portfolio to retailers and consumers across the U.S. market, said Julius Grant, the Chief Commercial Officer of Cannabis Growth. The leadership team at Southern Glazer's shares our values, priorities, and future-forward view of the category, and together we're committed to creating an immediate strategic route to market for Cannabis premium CBD beverages. Now, Southern Glazers will distribute Cannabis Growth CBD beverages, beginning with its CBD-infused sparkling water brand Quattro across 7 states, with additional states in the months to come. And Southern Glazers will be selling Quattro through its existing commercial infrastructure, including its industry-leading Proof e-commerce platform at cgproof.com. And Cannabis Growth is one of the first U.S. CBD beverage producers to access the nationwide network of a large-scale alcohol distributor to reach consumers across the U.S. at mainstream retail stores. Now, this agreement reinforces our consumer-focused approach to identifying emerging growth areas where we can add value to our customers, said David Chaplin, the Chief Growth Officer of Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Now, there's a strong consumer interest in the CBD-infused beverage category, and our distribution network is uniquely positioned to deliver the most efficient and effective route to market for CBD suppliers and retail customers. We're proud to align with Cannabis Growth, a company well-positioned to lead this product category, with a portfolio of premium, highly desirable consumer brands. So Quattro Sparkling contains 20 milligrams of premium U.S.-grown hemp-based CBD in 4 refreshing flavors: cucumber and mint, passion fruit and guava, berry and acai, and ginger and lime. So I have been talking about how you're starting to see a lot more interest, at least, for instance, from companies like from Charlotte's Web Holdings, who announced that they're going to be bringing their CBD products into the Canadian market. Now, you are starting to see the reverse, specifically with Cannabis Growth bringing their CBD industry or beverages to the U.S. market. Obviously, that's part of their just overall entry into the U.S. space to build up their brand, build up their reputation, and build up distribution channels within the U.S. So that way, once they are able to launch through Acreage Holdings with changes in legalization in the U.S., that they'll have most of those sort of infrastructure build-outs established so they can launch their products as quickly and effectively as possible. That being said, I do think that that does speak somewhat largely of them being having this deal with Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits as far as their distributor. That is going to give them a little bit more quick access in that market, and it will be interesting to see how their CBD beverages compete against the many other products that are already based in the U.S. Again, focusing on sort of a different angle of approach might be the smarter way to go, and hopefully we start to see them launch a few more products within that CBD category within the next coming months to sort of continue their brand reputation within the U.S. But I do think that you're kind of going to continue to see this back and forth between U.S. companies entering into the Canadian market and Canadian companies entering into the U.S., as both areas are trying to sort of stay ahead of the curve and anticipate legalization changes within the next year that will allow for sort of an overall North American cannabis retail sort of experience where you can have companies going across borders and setting themselves up to be an overall North American brand. Again, Cannabis Growth is obviously very much intending on doing that, and you're starting to see a lot of U.S. companies as things are starting to change legalization-wise. Again, potential of the Safe Banking Act being passed through the Senate within the next couple of months is going to open up a lot more doors for U.S. companies, and then it'll be interesting to see how this overall competition plays out and which companies sort of can get the jump on the other ones. That's all for today's podcast, and once again, today's podcast is sponsored by Phyto Extractions Incorporated, trading on the CSE as XTRX, an agricultural scale cannabis extraction, distillation, and product manufacturer located in Langley, BC, at its co-located Health Canada licensed standard processing facility for extraction, not cultivation, and for sales of extracts, topicals, and edibles through Ad Astra Labs Incorporated, an analytical testing laboratory through Chemia Analytics Incorporated. That's all for today's podcast. Podcast is now a certified word trademark on the blockchain through Cognate Incorporated CM certification. InvestorIdeas.com podcasts are also available on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and TuneIn. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor of this podcast, please contact InvestorIdeas.com. Investor Ideas reminds all listeners to read our disclaimers and disclosures on the InvestorIdeas.com website, and this podcast is not an endorsement to buy products or services or securities. Investors are reminded that all investments involve risk and possible loss of investment. Investor Ideas does not condone the use of cannabis except where permissible by law. Our site does not possess, distribute, or sell cannabis products.